going to show you here is a perfectly normal piece of paper, nothing in it. Now, one of the things that I've really enjoyed taking up as a hobby is origami, where you can take pieces of paper and turn them into various things. And what I thought today is I would turn this into a flower. It's not terribly difficult to do. A little bit of practice. Except when the tissue paper decides it doesn't want to cooperate with it. And you can take a little piece here and make a little leaf on the stem. More or less. Now the problem is that that's not exactly satisfying when you want to give that to a young lady as a flower. She's probably not going to look at that and be too terribly excited. But being a magician, I can change that in but an instant if I go over here and take my...
Whoa! Wow, that was good.
You have a lovely flower.
Wow. Isn't that nice? That was pretty. How'd you do that?
What we have here is something I call the Japanese wedding ceremony. It was a little custom that they did in Japan. To the best of my knowledge, they still do in some areas, or at least some who are more traditional in the wedding that they have. And they used to take their rings and they would drop them in the beverage of the day. And if your marriage was meant to be for all eternity, they would link into like that sign that looks like affinity, you know. And so that was kind of a test that the Japanese would have. If you'd like to look at those and examine those to see that indeed they are separate, there's no breaks. Satisfied?
Good.
All right. What we'll do, leave them out where you can see them. And I have my chalice of the drink of the day. And we see we'll drop them in singly. 1 and 2. And take them and stir them around a little bit. To give it a little jiggle here. And with the ceremony, we'll see. There we are.
Oh, very good.
That illustrates to us also that we were separated from Christ. That when we were on our own, there was no way that we would be open to Him or that He could receive us in that sinful state. But as we were plunged into His blood, we were united again because we were made whole, and we were made whole in Him. And so we are, for eternity, joined together. This here is one of my favorites. It teaches us a lesson of not to trust the riches of man. And it's a story of the emperor and his riches. And there is this emperor in the Orient who became very proud of the fact that he had all kinds of jewels. He had precious jade and pearls, great price. And you'd have a whole pot full of them. And so every day he would bring them out on a platform and show them to the people. And every night, just to be safe, he would take them and he would cover them. And he would put them up high above the king's temple, where everybody could see the platform. But he got a little worried that maybe people would be too tempted. They could see. And so he decided to hide it. There we go. And put it there for all to see, but so that it would be hidden. And one night, you know, they talked about that. Have you ever heard that expression, An ill wind blows no good. Well, that was sort of came from the Orient too. It was the idea that there were good winds and there were bad winds, and that the bad wind would blow in bad luck, and the good wind would blow in good luck. So this particular night there was a great wind that came up, and he was concerned because he would see that go. And they always would take the platform away, so just that the pot itself would be suspended. And that night he was a bit worried because the pot was there, suspended in that great wind. And he wasn't sure whether it was a good wind or an ill wind. So the next morning when he had the people take it down, he said, let's look at this quickly before people come to see my great treasures. And what he found is that the
Wow.
ill wind had blown away all of his treasures. And so he had nothing to show the people. And what he learned from that was that you can build up great treasure, but you can't put trust in that because it can disappear just as easily as it comes. And one of the things that we learn in life, if we're wise, is that choices have consequences. He chose to display his wealth and put his trust in his wealth, and that wealth deserted him and left him penniless, even though he was emperor. And our choices, too, can make all the difference. And I want to show you that with these 4 platforms. You can see we have 1, 2, and 3 that are just platforms. We have a 4th, a little bit more, has its own little surprise. Now, we can all make the right choice. If I said, come up here and hit one of these platforms, I think you'd probably go. But what if I was to make it a little more interesting? Which is what I'm going to let you do for me. What if I was to cover each of these platforms so that they all look the same? Then all of a sudden it makes it a little more interesting. But if every choice has its consequences, and if you make the wrong choice, there can be a price to pay. Now I can make this even a little more interesting. I can step around front here, and I can ask you if you'd go over and just scramble those up. You can move the cups, you can move the platforms, you can move anything you want. If you think the cups are marked in some way, you can change them. You can move the position of the platform so it's not where it was before. Move them around in any way you wish, but leave them far enough apart that my hands can fit in between them, and so that... Okay. Now, choices have consequences. Now I know where that cup was before. But see, this is what Satan is like. I was going to say you play the part. He moves things around, he hides things and disguises things so that all the choices look the same. And isn't that what they tell us in this world? That there's no good or bad, that it's all just relative. It's, it's just preferences. It doesn't really matter what you choose, they're all good. Every road leads to God. We've all heard these type of things. But we all know that secretly underneath one of these is a really, really bad choice. And so Satan tries to deceive us, but if we listen to the Holy Spirit, we can make those choices and make them wiser. So that's always important as we go through life, not to make the choices in our own strength. For a while the odds are pretty good, but now and so